Okay. Sound. Let's try it. Let's try this. Let's see if I can make it work. Hopefully now you should be hearing sound. I'm trying to work on the sound. Hopefully you can now hear my sound. I'm going to talk for a few more minutes and then hopefully this will catch up. But please let me know in the comments if you do hear sound. So I'm now trying, trying this with sound. So let's have you. Please keep letting me know if you... I'm audible. Fabulous. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. This is a little more complex than I expected it would be to actually be able to run this live. So anyway, now I'll go back to what I was saying with sound. I'm Melissa Loble. I'm your facilitator for this course. This is my office at home. This morning I was in my office at UC Irvine, and I had two other people helping me this morning. So I might not be super fluid tonight because I'm going to try to manage multiple places with your questions, just to warn you. So I've got the Google Stream on a computer next to me so I can follow your comments there and answer your questions there. I'm also going to try to track Twitter at the same time so I can follow your questions in Twitter as well. So we're gonna try our best here. This is a lot of different technologies all at once for me to try to track. So hopefully I won't miss any of your questions. But I wanted to start by saying a few things. There's been some questions regarding the assignment. So I thought I'd start with addressing a few of those questions, and then I'm going to get into some of your questions from the forums, and then I'm going to start trying to answer your questions from both Twitter and the comments. So before I do that, though, I think earlier a couple people wanted to know why and how we actually made this happen. So I thought I'd share a little bit about the technologies we're using to actually make this live broadcast happen. So one of the things that Google and YouTube, since Google bought YouTube, are doing together is trying to find ways to broadcast sessions like this, broadcast all sorts of different things over the internet. And in order to do that, part of YouTube now is the ability to have live streams. So when you go into your Google accounts, if you have channels in your Google, so I have a channel for this course. If you have channels associated with your YouTube accounts, you can actually ask YouTube to be able to do live streaming events. And they authenticate it in your account. We just asked and they had no problem with that. And then once that was established, you can choose a broadcast player. In my case, we chose Wirecast. We chose Wirecast because it's actually able to make this a private chat. And what I mean by private is you all could get to it because of the link in our Coursera course, but it's not publicly broadcasting. There's other ones like Google Wire and some other ones that will public broadcast this to anybody. But I wanted to protect you a little bit in this course because I am going to refer to a couple of you by name, if that's okay. And I wanted to make sure you didn't feel like you were being broadcast out to the whole world without you knowing it. So the only people that can get to this, because I'm using Wirecast as my broadcast player, which I just download and simply installed on my computer, are those people that clicked in our Coursera course on the link that I posted in Coursera. So that's the technology to make this happen. We had some hiccups this morning. This is beta. Wirecast is beta. So one of the fun things about beta is things don't always work. And so this morning we had some delays about getting connected because of this tool. But it could very easily work for you if you're trying to broadcast out to lots of people. With Google Hangouts, you can meet with 10 or less. But as soon as you get to over 10, it just doesn't handle it very well. So that's why we wanted to broadcast. That's also why I can't actually hear your questions. I'm sorry, I wish I could hear you by voice, but I am going to have to go with what's in Twitter and then also what's in the comments and the questions from our forums. So let me get us started with a couple of the questions from the forums, if that's okay. And I'm keeping my eye over here on my comments and my Twitter, and I don't see any activity yet. So as I answer some of these questions, please give me some questions to answer, because I definitely don't have enough here for an hour. I was hoping that you all had other things you wanted to know. So the first question I'm going to start with was a question on the assignment. So we have a variety of different people in this course, if you haven't figured that out yet. We've got people teaching really young children, we have people teaching K-12, we have people teaching college and graduate school, we even have people teaching adult learners way older in their lives. Well, because of that, a lot of you want to do different kinds of things on your assignment, and that's great. I highly, highly encourage it. My one request is just in the very first question of the assignment, please make sure that you give your readers context for what you're doing. And I did cue you for that, I did ask you for that, but make sure you tell us, I'm working with adults, this is the age group, this is the population, and just be specific about that so that the readers of your assignments can give you feedback relative to that population. I'm very much hoping that in the future, Coursera comes out, I know they're working on it, with the technology so that you could actually pick your review groups, and we could have set that up based on interest. I would love to see that happen, or based on experience, so that other perhaps adult educators or adult teachers were working with other people working with adults, and other maybe preschool teachers were working with preschool teachers. I was hopeful that they would get far enough along with that before this course, but that didn't happen. So you might get people from all walks of life. Just make sure you give them good context. So now that we've talked about the assignment, I'm going to jump in. Oh, good. Wait, I've got a question already. All right. Are there any particular publications you recommend K-12 educators read to keep up on trends and best practices in educational software and technology? And that's from KP. Great question, KP. Sorry if I look this way while I answer questions. That's a great question. So yes, there's a couple of really good ones that I encourage you to keep track of. Now, this is US based, so there are probably publications, we're representing 90 countries here together, which is pretty awesome. And by the way, there are 34 of you watching on this now, which is awesome, from all over, I'm sure. In the US, I encourage you to keep track of ISTE, which is the International Society focused on technology and education for K-12. I encourage you to follow Edutopia, and these aren't written publications, a lot of these are electronic publications, but Edutopia does quite a bit with technology and education. I also encourage you, even though you're in K-12, to follow EDUCAUSE. And there's some really great research in EDUCAUSE, which is focused on higher education. However, there's a lot of projects working these days where higher education is partnering with K-12 schools and districts, and you're seeing more and more research come from them. You're also seeing some more, I don't want to say innovative, but more experiments with different kinds of technologies. And so it's a good place to go get some additional resources. The other things that in this next week coming up, actually we're going to release the materials tomorrow afternoon, is great open resources. So there's some really good open repositories for resources and then also tracking new trends in education. And you'll be getting lists of those, but there's some great, we'll be sharing those, but there's some great places where you can go regularly get information from. I also encourage you to join Edmodo and join communities in Edmodo. There's a fair amount of talking about just best practices and lessons and examples in there among teachers, but I think you can find other like-minded teachers doing similar things, and you could connect in specific disciplines, specific age groups, and specific interests. That's another place to join. The last thing I'll mention is please try to keep in touch with some of your classmates. I will keep all of our social networks going. So the Facebook page will stay up, the Google's community will stay up. I'll keep participating in these. Please feel free to use them and continue to. Or I notice that some people are starting to create separate groups. Feel free to do that too and keep connected that way so that you can learn about what each other's doing in a very practical way. And these are people that you've already worked with. So we have another question. Do people on our contact list get notified that we are in Google Hangouts? That is a great question. That's from Jane Sweetland. And by the way, I apologize in advance if I butcher anybody's name. I will try my best to pronounce your names correctly. So far, they've been easy. But yes, it's a good question. In your contact list, yes, people can actually ask you to hang out. So if you do use Google Hangouts, they can ask you to hang out based on your contact list. Go set, though, your privacies. That's the default. You can actually turn that off so that people in your contact list can't ask you. You can also turn off what kinds of notifications you get associated with what people are asking you in your Google account. So play around, go in there. Google is really good about having lots of different settings for lots of different things. So go in there and check those out. But the default is people can ask you to hang out. They can't force you to, but they can ask you to hang out. So let me get into a couple of the questions from our discussion forum. So I'm going to read from my paper. We had a great question from MJ Smith. By the way, I appreciate MJ because my nickname is MJ. My middle name is Joelle, so I enjoyed seeing an MJ Smith. How can teachers help students to determine what is important and what is not? How can teachers encourage and guide students to use technology to become independent learners? So I think this is a really great question because part of our use of technology with our students is to help them be effective technology users in their lives. So if that's one of our focuses, it becomes important that we create lessons that use technology in very explicit ways and that we build in understanding in the beginning or explanations for why you're choosing to use the technology in the beginning, and that you build in reflection at the end of using that technology. So I highly encourage you to think about when you're trying to help students become better technology citizens, if you want to call them that, it's really important to expose them to technologies and then wrap that exposure with good reflection. I would even encourage you perhaps to have some of your students blog a little bit or even post their own reflections in the social technologies that you're using as they're experiencing those technologies. Because you're right, one of the great things that we can be doing with this is not just having engaging lessons and hoping that students are learning more, but we can also really help to ensure that students are understanding how to use these technologies as lifelong learners. So that was a great question. Let's see, we've got some other questions in here. Okay, I put my long question in discussion forums, and Eloise, I wonder if we answered your question earlier. I'm looking at my list because I thought we pulled out all of the questions, but we might not have. So Eloise, it looks like you're working with the peer assessment at the moment and having difficulty designing an online activity appropriate to your students as they are all adult learners. A lot of them are not very tech savvy as we train in the aged care industry. In this course, we assume all learners of tech age group. Good question. That's important to know. I agree. And hold on, let me sit up a little bit while I'm reading this question. And it says, are there any tips on how to keep gamification fun and not be manipulative? Great question. And what other kinds of online tools can you use with an adult population? These are all really, these are important, especially because, like you said, we've been focusing on a K-12 demographic in this course. That's how the course was initially designed, but a lot of these practices can be used for all sorts of age groups. In fact, I will be honest, I didn't really touch a whole lot on the really young age groups, and so we could definitely think about how we could apply to the young age groups, but to Eloise's question, we should also think about applying to the older age groups. So some of the things that you can do, and I think that adults sniff out games even more than K-12 students do. So you're right, they're going to think you're being manipulative or you're trying to use a game as a way to make this fun, but it's really not fun. So I encourage you to try to look for, with your adult population, particularly not super tech savvy populations, very simple ways of making a game out of the use of a technology. So as opposed to using gaming technologies like the online games, especially this last week that we've shared, some of those might not be as comfortable to your adult learners. They might really feel like this is just a game, what am I learning? So I would encourage you to then take like Twitter or take Facebook or take perhaps the use of Google Docs and a leaderboard, and just make simple game strategies out of those tools. So very simple things like the first person to find a resource related to a particular topic in the readings and the presentations, posted on the discussion forums. So now they're reading and looking for something very specific, and it's a game to find that thing, and then it's also important that they found it and that they're posting that and contributing. Or you could say, the first person to identify 10 great people to follow in Twitter that are related to the healthcare industry and perhaps your segment of the healthcare industry, and that share great information regularly. Post those, and the first 10 people, will get acknowledged, or do something like that. Like play some games, but make them more low-key games, and use the technology as a way to facilitate the game, but don't necessarily run the games themselves, like we've been talking about this week for some of those adult learners. That's some of the stuff we do, and some of the stuff I've done, because I've taught adult populations actually more recently, and in those settings, it's little challenges like that will make it fun and engaging and give them quests without making it feel too gamey. So we also have, how about the using of Scratch, Alice, or Kudu for kids? Yes, those are all good. Oh, somebody asked if this will be recorded. Sorry. Yes, it will definitely be recorded. And the one from this morning was recorded. It hasn't appeared in my YouTube channel yet, so I'm trying to figure out how to make that happen faster. I think it takes a little bit of time for it to appear. But these are being recorded, and I will make sure that they get put in the YouTube channel. Okay. So back to the question about how about using some of these tools that Patricia Schultz has mentioned for particularly young kids. And yes, those are great tools to use. The fun thing about even the youngest population, in fact, earlier we got asked about preschool age kids and what you can do, is there's some great visual games out there that enable you to have students who can't even read or write yet use icon-based and visual recognition-based technology. And those are some really fun things. And there's some drawing tools, some other tools like you mentioned here that are great for using for really the young ages in particular. In our resources that we're releasing tomorrow, there'll be some of those. We're going to try to give you some more young age group resources in this. And so take a look at some of those. There's more games coming, lots more games. I asked 4 colleagues to do some guest speaking with their resources. So I brought in a math professor that's worked with college-age math students, but worked with K-12 students and has been teaching online K-12 students for quite a while. She did some math and science resources. Her colleague is focused on English, and so we've got English language resources. Victoria O'Neill, who's our course manager, is going to be presenting some resources for language instruction, and some of those are great for younger students. And then Jesse Keeler, who's our technology manager in this course, he's going to be giving you guys some art resources, and he definitely has some for the younger kids at all ages for some art resources. And then Chandler Loble, yes, my husband, who is a business teacher, is going to give you a whole bunch of really great business games, business resources, and career games that you can use with particularly some older kids and some adult learners, but some really fun things. So keep an eye out for those. There's going to be just short PowerPoints and then 5-minute PowerPoints, and then there's going to be where they tour those sites, and then there's going to be long pages of resources that you can go take a look at. So more ideas coming. Yes. So speaking of quests, yes, great resource share, Zuno.com, great tool for web quests. Yes, I've seen people use that, and it's great. And web quests are great things to help teach that digital or technology citizenry that we were talking about earlier tonight. Great way to do that too, because it helps students also understand what's a good resource and not a good resource. And that's important in their understanding of how to use technology as well. I mean, they're inundated with stuff. So how do they discern what's valuable to them in their own independent learning? And thank you for thanking me in here. Someone thanked me for some of the work that we're doing with this class. I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart, because I really wanted to make this a learning community and not so much about the knowledge I'm necessarily trying to share with you, but more just resources and ideas, and to get you all to come together and help one another and give resources and ideas. And you've gone above and beyond that, and I'm so excited and so just happy to see everything that's been happening in the course. So I really want to take this second to thank you all too for all of the great work that you've been doing in this course. And please keep it up. We're releasing the last bit of content tomorrow, and then you guys will have an extra couple of days with that content so that you can be better prepared for your peer assignment. And then all that will be left will be the peer assignment and then a final exam. And for anybody that's worried about the final exam, it's going to be exactly like the quizzes. So it's just going to be some basic concepts and applying those concepts from the lectures. So if you've watched the lectures, read the notes, you will be absolutely fine. There's nothing that will be on that exam that it's outside of the lectures. And you have multiple attempts. So not only if the technology crashes, but if you want to go back in and take it, you can go back in and take it a second time. Go for it. I want it to be a learning experience for you, so just wanted to give you that heads up. Okay, so we've got some more. Oh, the site for quests. Yes, Zunil.com. Sorry, coughing. And it's been shared in the comments. Let me just get a little bit of water. Okay, so more questions from the discussions. The second question that came in from the discussions was, I was thinking when you work with kids, it is recommended to ask parents to monitor their children's progress in using different tools. They might even help children or learn a little bit. I would like to get parents involved in what their children do. What do you think? And this was Aida Sermeno asked this question, so apologize if I pronounced it wrong. You've noticed that in a number of the lectures I've mentioned things about getting parental buy-in. It is so important, I think, to involve the parents in your use of technology, particularly if you're going to start using social technologies, because parents are very concerned about how their children are participating in social technologies, and you want to make sure that they understand and feel comfortable with supporting their children in doing the activities that you're doing, hopefully when they're at home. So yes, involving the parents is great. One of the things that I've seen a couple of the teachers that I've worked with do is use technology around any kind of back to school night. So this may be a US phenomenon. I'm not sure if this happens a lot in other countries, but there will be days, oftentimes each semester, where teachers come to, where the parents come to the schools, or I've seen them done virtually in virtual schools, and get to meet the teachers and talk about the classes that their children are in. And what I've seen is I've seen teachers that use technology a lot get the parents to get involved in the technology before they come to that back to school night, then use the technology in the back to school night, and then once again follow up with it after. So that's a good way to start to get parents exposed to the technologies. The other thing is having public websites or websites internally in your school that give information to parents about the kinds of technologies they're using, and then inviting them into communities. That if you create communities around your classes, like a private Google community, you could create a private Facebook group for parents if you wanted. There are places that you can say, hey, these are places where you as parents may want to ask each other questions and how your children are using the technologies. And then you can say, I'll go in and check it once a week or twice a week, or I'll post some interesting articles or research or ideas for how you can help me help your children when they're outside of the class. So finding ways to bring them in and include them is really important, and being very explicit, finally, about where and how you're having your students use technologies, and demonstrating that as much as you can. So I really encourage you to get parent involvement. And you're right, they can learn as well in this process. And I think it's a way to help the parents get involved in your children's learning activities as well. Just be a part of it and feel collected in it. I think that can be really valuable too. Okay. And we're keep sharing more. Keep sharing them. Oh, love, yes. Love Evernote and Digo. Yes, I agree. People are sharing all sorts of great tools. This is awesome in the chat. Great question. Will I be at the eLearn Strategy Symposium in Costa Mesa? That is down the street from me. I hadn't planned on it, but if some of you are all going to be there, I could absolutely be there. So I'm going to ask Eva, and I've shared this before with everybody, but I'm going to share it again. I'm going to ask Eva. I'm going to post my email in here. Eva, if you will email me the details, I will work on getting myself there for sure, and then perhaps we can all meet for coffee, or some of us can meet if anybody's attending that. So Eva, it's on you. Email me, and I will commit to being there and try to meet up with people. Okay, so how can we use Moodle for collaborative learning? I see that question's come in. And actually, earlier, some of the students asked about learning management systems in general. So let me step back and just give a little bit of an introduction to learning management systems, since I didn't talk about them in this class. And then let me answer your Moodle question. And that Moodle question was it went so fast, I missed who asked my Moodle question, so I apologize that I can't reference you specifically. Okay, so learning management systems. Probably most of you are very aware that there are administrative platforms out there that you can use to run your classes. And you can do them in two different ways. One, you as just an individual teacher can go use a free resource. Edmodo has the ability to run your classes for free. There are some of the major learning management system technology providers have free systems as well. So Blackboard has Blackboard course sites. Canvas, it's by a company called Instructor. They have a free course site as well. I forget what it's actually called, but if you just go to their website, canvas.net, you'll be able to see what their platform is. And I believe Desire to Learn also has a free version of theirs, where just a single teacher can go take their 20 or 30 students, or even 5 classes of students, and create an administrative learning platform. And I say administrative because it can host everything from delivering content to having discussions and asynchronous interaction, to having tests, to submitting assignments. So it can do administrative stuff, but it can also, back to your question, help you with collaborative learning. So that's one way. You can go sign up for them free, individual teacher, doesn't matter if your district has it. The other way is if your school or district, or university, if you're a university teacher, has a license to a learning management system. Companies like Blackboard, like Canvas, Desire to Learn, Moodle is open source, it's a free technology. All of these different technologies are out there and can then manage all of the classes at your school or district. So you can also participate in those. So I want to make sure everybody knew you've got options. I worked for a learning management system company for a long time and worked with K-12 actually districts and schools in implementing their learning management systems. So back to your question, can Moodle be used to collaborate? So at UCI, we do actually use Moodle. Moodle is a free tool, but it's kind of free like a puppy, not free like lunch, because you do need to actually put that software on a server somewhere and have it run so that everybody can access it. So generally Moodle's hosted somewhere, either by the school or off in the cloud by somebody else. We have ours off in the cloud. And you can use it to collaborate. There are a number of different tools. So you have, first of all, discussions. And I encourage you to use asynchronous discussions. It's a lot like the Coursera discussions, although I would argue that one of the nice things about learning management systems is they actually lead and manage the discussions way better. They're way more organized. Our discussions are kind of chaos a little bit. I'm still getting used to that. But you can really manage the discussions and student participation pretty tightly. You can also use group functionality. There's great group functionality in Moodle and in all of these learning management systems where you can put students into smaller groups and they can discuss and collaborate and do assignments and work on projects together. That tied in with like a Google Docs, wow, you can have students collaborating on docs, you can have them posting them in their discussions in their group in Moodle. You can even release content only for those particular groups. So one of my favorite activities to do in a learning management system with groups is a role play. I've had students come together and conduct a town hall over an issue. For example, perhaps there's a town hall over whether or not to allow fires at the beach. So in thinking this, I have students get into groups and play different roles in their groups. So one group will represent local residents. Another group will represent community activists that are concerned about the cleanliness of the beach and polluting the oceans. Another group will be the politicians for the community. Another group might be engineers, or could be, some other group, police, whomever might else be interested in that debate. And so then students in their individual groups work on that topic or that subject from their group perspective. And I release content just to those students in their individual groups. Then we have either an asynchronous or a synchronous virtual town hall. You could host it in the discussion forums, or better yet, you could host it in a Google Hangouts, or if you have a Blackboard Collaborate or a WebEx or an Adobe Connect. Those are all virtual meeting rooms that you can hold synchronous meetings. You could actually have a virtual town hall, which would be really cool, and students can come and play their role. And that's a really simple way to do a simulation almost, a role play, but using the collaborative tools within a learning management system like Moodle. So hopefully that example helps you. Do you have any advice on how not to exclude parents who don't speak English, primarily Spanish in a U.S. classroom? That is an awesome question. So one of the things that Victoria is going to share in her presentation tomorrow and her resources are some translation tools, and helping sometimes those parents that don't speak English get access to your ideas or resources in ways that they can then translate. So one of the cool things about YouTube, I encourage you guys to go play with YouTube. And the videos that I posted up, there's actually a beta translator now in all of the captioning that's presented in YouTube. So if you go into the closed captions and turn it on, and then in those videos, if you look at the beta translator, you can actually ask for those captions to be translated into Spanish. So that's one thing. You could actually record little help videos for your parents, and then they could actually be able to listen to you and watch you and see it translated in Spanish. So that's one thing that you can do. One word of advice with Google Captions, we've done a lot of work lately with video, and I didn't edit my captions here at all. We just didn't have the bandwidth to do that. But I warn you, when you do small videos, go in and edit the the YouTube captions. It's really easy to do. It's super easy to do. And go in and do it, because YouTube gets some things really weird with their auto captioning tool. I bet you probably saw some of that too in the Coursera captioning. But then, like I said, it's got that beta captioner. So maybe you can record a minute or two video about specific things that you want these parents to know, and then give them access to these videos on YouTube and let them translate that. There's other things with web pages and web translators that if you show them how to do that, they can then see your information in English and then go translate it as they need to. So at least they're getting the information. That's what my husband actually does that quite a bit, because his population is predominantly a Spanish population, and most of his parents, English is definitely their second language, and in a lot of cases not a very strong language. So those are two ways that you can help get information out to parents to help them. Okay, so feel free to post more questions. Wikis are a great start for teachers, yes, who are reluctant. So I think somebody did ask a question about how do you get teachers that are reluctant to use technology to use technologies? So one of the things actually there's a couple of things that I'll suggest. One, show them that it works. So show them, get them to come into your class, get them to come into your virtual class, and show them that you've tried things and that they're safe. I also encourage you to be very open when things don't work, and rather than complain. I don't want to say complain. Rather than always be frustrated by why it doesn't work, talk about, yeah, I tried to do that like earlier today. We were 10 minutes late because we just couldn't get this to work. Well, I was open about that. This is what happened. These are the things that we're going to try differently, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world that it didn't work. I think oftentimes that's concerning to teachers. The other thing is, I made a push for this earlier. If any of you are administrators, particularly K-12 administrators, please support helping teachers get recognized for their experimentation with technology. So one of the things that's happening in K-12 and in higher education is that teachers want to experiment with technology, but it takes a ton of time. And it really does. Especially if you're building lessons the first time out. I mean, we all remember being teachers, when we were creating our lessons from scratch the first time. That takes a lot of work. And it takes a lot of work to iterate on those lessons. So you're going to teach it once, find ways to improve it, teach it again, find ways to improve it. That's taking time. And a lot of times it might take time for you to learn how to use the technology, create the right kinds of resources and documentation for your students on how to use that technology. So all of that time can be really beneficial, but is often not recognized. And so if you have the opportunity to help get those kinds of things recognized, please, I encourage you to find ways to do that. I've been trying really hard at the universities and the schools that I've worked at to get the use of technology and the innovative use of technology incorporated in as examples of why somebody should get promoted or should get tenure or those kinds of things, right? So that they're getting recognized that they're contributing for doing these things. So I encourage you to, if you can, help. That's another way to get reluctant teachers, quite frankly. They need to know their school and their administration is supporting them in trying out these tools. The last thing I'll say is helping those teachers get recognition outside of their school with their peers. So, if you see a teacher that's reluctant to maybe get involved, but loves to go to there's a conference they like to go to, or they're really active in a community, or they are blogging, help to encourage that teacher to share their experiences by commenting on their blogs, by reinforcing the work that they're doing, perhaps help them get a grant, or look for ways to maybe get an extra iPad in their classroom, or any technology in some cases. Just finding ways to get out there and to help them feel recognized even out and among their peer group for the work that they're doing. Because we all as teachers, we just want to make education better, and we want our students to have that better education experience. And we feel rewarded when other people recognize that that's what we're doing. And so finding ways to do that too would be my suggestion. My main concern, how do you evaluate successful completion of an activity? Yes, beyond just capturing that they posted 2 comments. I am so glad that you said that, Amy, because one of my biggest frustrations, and we all do this, we've all done this, is the instructor that says you must post 3 times a week, you must go respond to 2 other students' posts, and then what it becomes for students is a checkbox, a worksheet. But now it's just a virtual worksheet, right? So students are like, okay, I'm supposed to go do this 3 times and this 2 times, and did I do what I was supposed to do? And it doesn't become then about the collaboration. So how can you combat that? How do you, first of all, motivate students to actually participate? And then second of all, how do you evaluate? So 2 things that I do is I try to put students not only in the passenger seat, but in the driver's seat of this collaboration. And what I mean by that is encouraging students to post for quality and giving them examples of what quality responses, whether it's in Facebook, whether it's in Twitter, whether it's in a discussion, whether it's contributing in a synchronous class. What is a quality contribution? If I wanted to, I've even created rubrics, and I've seen teachers do this. Create rubrics for what is good participation and give them examples. So I start with that. And then what I do is I'll oftentimes encourage students to, or I'll put them in groups. And I will assign a different group each week responsible for facilitating the conversation. So not only should they be contributing, but it's their responsibility to make sure that the discussions and the conversations that are happening are continuing. They're bringing out relevant points to the topic or the concepts that I'm presenting, and they are helping students apply what they're learning to new situations. So, and then I grade that group on how well did they make sure that conversation was facilitated, good information came out, and then I have them summarize at the end of the week the main key points in what students were talking about. So finding ways to get students to own making the collaboration happen can help you avoid having to do the post 3 times and checkbox 2 times and respond here kinds of things. And having those rubrics can as well. The other thing you can think about doing with your students, particularly in discussions, is making sure that you're not having the same discussion in multiple places. So I would give my course a fail on this because I set up 4 different social technologies and said, here, have at it. So some of the same conversations are happening in all of those places, and shame on me for that. I definitely inundated you all because I wanted you to be able to play with them, and everybody has preferences, but I didn't really structure them in a way that would have been a motivating way to encourage a lot of collaboration in one particular site. So what I would encourage you to do is, in order to motivate students, make sure that the conversations that you're having in any kind of social technology or in this asynchronous or synchronous collaboration space, those conversations are critical to the learning and you're not repeating them somewhere else. I see teachers all the time post the discussion forum question online and then repeat that same forum question in class. Well, students are going to see the online then as oh, you're just making me do this. They're not going to see it as, oh, there's value to this. And then the second thing, back to your assessment part, is make sure that the questions you ask are ways that students will, that are opportunities for students to then take their learning and do better on some other assessment that you offer in the class. So the discussions, the stuff going on in Twitter, I'm going to cough again. The stuff going on in a synchronous setting, what you need to do is make sure that you test for that. And you test for that in an assignment that you have students submit. You test for that in your paper test if you have one of those. You test for that in the kinds of things that you ask students to do in projects. That learning that is happening in all of those collaborative spaces needs to be evaluated, and students need to know where it's going to be evaluated so that they know there's value in their participation. Any suggested rubrics or examples or we could find online? I promise, Amy, by the end of this course, I will get you at least one good example of a collaboration rubric. I can get that posted for you. I just need to ask some permission from some teachers to let me use it. I have one, but it's higher ed focused. I'm making a note for myself. I have one, but it's a little more higher ed focused right now because I'm teaching right now adult learners. So I'll share that too, but I will get you one before this class is over. No problem. And we've got somebody from Australia. That's wonderful. Good article in the Chronicle of Higher Ed, November 29th, about the importance of support, trust, and enormous amount of time that takes to build a course that optimizes technology. Yes, yes, and yes. That is so true. I think a question that came up earlier was, it's great that teachers are willing to do this, but this is way above and beyond the call of duty. How do you help teachers in those situations? And my advice is bite off small chunks at a time. Do little things. Try one little technology in one lesson and build up. Don't try to build this great course that's all completely and massively technology infused with a bunch of technologies that you haven't used before in that kind of setting, because it'll just spiral. It always amazes me how much more time it takes to do something with technology. Even this course, even building this MOOC, and I had helped we've had 14 MOOCs now at UCI and varying levels of quality, I'll be honest. We've definitely learned our lessons through these MOOCs, and I've helped faculty develop those first 13, and then this was the one I was leading. And even in helping those faculty, and I would tell them how much time it took to build those courses, by the time it came around for mine, wow, was I surprised. And I forgot to remind myself that it's time consuming. So biting off little chunks, and trying to create supportive environments where technology feel like, for faculty, instructors and teachers and faculty feel like that they can contribute using technology and that they're recognized for doing it. So important, and great point about that article. I have the Chronicle, so I'll see if I can grab that and post that in our course for everyone. Okay, so we're getting close to end of time. We have just about 10 more minutes, and I'm just looking at my questions over there. Sorry that this wasn't the best broadcast. You see me crawling off screen. This is what happens when you're managing this by yourself. But let's see if we've got any more final questions in this last 10 minutes, and then we will wrap up, and everybody can be on their way to getting more content tomorrow. So, question from Todd Anderson. Do you find that using technology allows students to dig deeper after they have reached mastery of a subject? Maybe a reward for completing the standard. I actually do, because I find what happens with technology is that students find themselves uncovering things that they wouldn't normally do in a non-technological environment. So inevitably, they're searching for something and they find some information that they would have never stumbled upon had they not been using that technology and exploring that topic. And I think that can get them into a deeper understanding of something. It also, technology, inherent in technology is application, right? A lot of what we're doing with technology, we're not just giving answers. We're not just, I mean, you guys post links, but when you post links to resources with one another, you say how you use it. So there's application implicit in that. And even kids and the way they use their social technologies, there's application to it. So I think the application helps with that deeper learning as well. One of my favorite, it's a kind of a joke, but I'll post it in the course, is Bloom's taxonomy with Wi-Fi at the bottom. So for those of you that are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, I love that Wi-Fi, is absolutely critical to even begin to build on up into higher order thinking. That's one of my favorites. And I think it's true in that technology can help us actually get to some of those higher order levels of thinking because of inherently how you use it and what it opens your doors to. Great point, Todd. Good. I know. So people are thanking me for the early hours. You know, we had people from in the earlier session that it was 2 a.m. I'm still shocked that they woke up at 2 a.m. and participated in this. That was very, very cool. Trinidad. Wow. W.A. Wilson. Gosh, this is so cool. Was wondering if you can tell me what software you use to capture the text from your videos. So I think you're probably wondering about so the videos themselves in my class, all I did was record them using Camtasia. And you can use Camtasia, just a cheap version, a free version, or their Studio. I use Studio because I do a little more editing to them, and Studio allows you to do some more fancy editing. But Camtasia Studio is pretty cheap. And you can use a free version, Camtasia. So I use Camtasia, I record my videos, and then I make sure that I encode them as an MP4, and then I just load them up into Coursera. So one of the fun parts about Coursera is that it actually does the transcripts for me. So when it's pulling down the RTF files that you guys are using, those rich text files, that's actually Coursera doing the translation. They send it off to translators to do those translations. But as I mentioned before, when you load things up into the YouTube channel, so you could create a YouTube channel for your students, make those videos private to that channel. I made mine public, but you don't have to. Or you can make them unlisted, and it'll automatically closed caption your videos. Now it closed captions in English, however, you can go edit the closed captions in English, and then you can use that beta translator to get it translated to another language. So you could easily use YouTube captioning as a way. And they do, I would say it gets 75% there. If you teach the sciences and math, be careful. Some of the terminology inherent in sciences and math comes up kind of weird. Or if you reference, like in history, a lot of people's names, that can come up kind of weird too. But I encourage you to play around with that. That's a way to get some of that translation done. And it's a cheap and, well, it's actually free way to do it. Could week 5 materials, yes, Michelle Smith, great question. Could week 5 materials be posted in the exam early? So this is a great, in my last couple minutes, I'm going to run through the rest of the course. So tomorrow afternoon, probably California time, apologize, that's where I operate on is California time. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to post all of the materials for week 4. Week 4 is the last week of any new content. And I wanted to post week 4's materials in week 3 so that you have plenty of time to access those materials as you're doing your peer assignment. So all new materials get posted tomorrow. The only thing then will be left, you will have access to everything in the course. The only things that will be left will be, I will be putting up some discussion forum questions for you to be thinking about and answering. But you guys are doing great on your own with discussing in the forums. And then you will have to need to finish your peer assessment. So that'll be due next week, and then you'll start assessing one another in the last week. And then in week 5, no new materials. I am going to give you a video that's a wrap-up video of my reflections. It'll be short, very short, and just encouraging you to continue participating in the community. But that will be the only new video, and then the final will get posted. And it sounds like I just got a request to have the final early. I have no problem doing that. So I will commit to posting the final at the very latest a week from tomorrow. So Wednesday of week 4. So I will post the final at the very latest, the middle of the week of week 4. I will try my very best. I'm still vetting it and making sure the questions, I wanted to have a bunch of people take it before I gave it to you guys because I wanted to make sure the questions made sense and they weren't confusing. And so I will try my very best to have that actually the beginning of week 4 so that you can have 2 full weeks to do the final. And remember, you will have 2 attempts on the final. So no problem. Happy to give you stuff early. So we have 4 minutes, and I do want to answer Amy's question because that's another good question. Considering privacy, what are the most common hurdles you've encountered with parents? The biggest hurdle I've encountered with parents is them wanting access to everything their son or daughter is doing. And while that completely makes sense and they have every right to ask that, sometimes the technologies are really hard to make that happen. So there's places where it's hard to give parents accounts that they can see what their son and daughter are doing, but they can't see what other kids in the class are doing. Because you have to be really careful, right, with privacy. Certainly they're allowed to see their son or daughter's contributions, but other parents might not want them seeing their own children's contributions. And you'd have to actually get explicit permission to do that. So the biggest challenge I've seen is helping parents get access to everything that they want when they ask for it with the technologies, without telling the parent, ask for your student login. Because that always makes me concerned too, because now if they're going to log in as their son or daughter, they could actually go do the work for their son or daughter. So that's the hardest thing. The hurdle from the parent's perspective, I think it's getting the social technologies accepted. There's a lot of parents that just, you tell them, this is really an educational activity, and they just don't get it because they're not using some of those technologies themselves, and all they think of is how they're used socially and all the bad stories that they've heard and the stalking and all that stuff, which is so true, and we have to be so careful, but they're just not well versed in privacy settings and how you can actually really protect yourself in a lot of these environments, and not have to worry about how exposed your children are, but they just don't understand that. So that would be the thing, I think, explaining to parents. You have to spend a lot of time explaining to parents about that. But like I said, the biggest hurdle is getting the technologies to cooperate in such a way so that they can see what their son or daughter is doing without it invading that son or daughter's privacy and without it invading other students' privacy. And with that, we have just 1 minute left. So I'm going to wrap up with a few things. First of all, thank you. We had 38 people tonight. We had 78 at our max earlier today. I am touched that all of you came to listen, and sorry it was a lot of me talking. It was sort of the only way to do this, but I'm really excited about the questions you've asked, your participation in this course. It's so much more than I ever expected, and I'm so thrilled. And I appreciate all of the really good feedback you've given me. We've made changes in the course based on your feedback. I have learned a ton as an instructor from you, and I can't thank you enough for that gift as well. So enjoy the rest of the course. You'll see more of me. I'm going to be doing wrap-up videos and those kinds of things, and you'll see more content come tomorrow for the final week of content, which is focused on open resources, and we're going to talk a little bit about MOOCs. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have, for those of you in the U.S., a lovely Thanksgiving holiday. Good night.